If you're browsing the bike rack at your local Walmart, you may have come across the BCA SC29, a $149 bike that stands out because it's assembled in the USA. Recently, I visited the factory where these bikes are assembled, the Bicycle Corporation of America, and on top of some great video and an amazing experience, I left with an SC29 to review, straight off the assembly line. I've been looking forward to this review because I've always been curious. What would an off-the-shelf bike at a big box store be like if shipping and poor assembly didn't taint the experience? Before I look at this bike, I want to take a step back to the first big box bike I reviewed, the Hyper Shocker that a friend purchased. I didn't know then just how far down the rabbit hole this would lead me to jumping. And at that time, I was very critical of the bike and big box bikes in general, mostly because I felt they were displayed as something they're not, like when the Shocker said it could be used for rugged downhill trails. They have since scaled back their claims on what most of these bikes can do, but there's still a lot of room for confusion, because there are many potential new riders that visit a local bike shop in the hopes of getting something great, only to be astonished by the pricing on even the most entry-level bikes. They're either left hanging with bike dreams on hold, or they revisit Walmart or another big box bike store. And that gets us back to the BCA SC29, that orange fork bike that grabs your attention on the store shelves at Walmart. But it's important to know what you're getting, because these look like mountain bikes, but in reality they're casual riding bikes with a mountain bike style. And they're very honest with that on both the factory hang tags and the info stickers on the frame. But they do still look like mountain bikes, so for a beginning rider or a well-intentioned parent, it can be easy to get confused and misconstrue what they can actually do. So today, not only are we going to look at the SC29, we're also going to discuss what it can and can't be used for. So what do you get if you buy one? Well, the first tip off that this isn't a true mountain bike should be in the handlebars. They're narrow, very narrow, 610 millimeters, and they also have a very comfort bike friendly looking rise. The headset is threadless, but the stem is of the light duty variety with only 2 screws holding on the bars. This bike is under $150, and at that price point, twist shifters rule the shelves. Pleasantly, the SC29 uses higher spec Shimano RevoShift shifters. These are the same shifters that were equipped on a $350 Raleigh I recently reviewed, and a nice step up from the low-end base model RevoShift, or worse, that we normally see in this price range. The brake levers are Radius branded with metal arms, but they have plastic housings. The straight steerer tube is branded with a metal placard that lets you know the origins of the bike's assembly. The orange fork is branded Vitesse, and it's the same low-end suspension fork found on most $99 to $179 big box bikes. There isn't a lot of travel, but it should be adequate for casual rides. The wheel set is also branded Vitesse, and it has decently machined dual-channel rim braking surfaces. And the generic tires fitted to those wheels are 29 by 2.30 inch knobbies. The frame on the SC29 is 60/61 aluminum, but that doesn't make it a light bike. It weighs in at exactly 37 pounds. All the frame graphics are stickers, and the welds on this frame look decent, but there is one hole on the top left of the top two, but overall the welds are acceptable. The frame finish is exceptional. It's a metallic dark gray. The drivetrain is the standard fare you would expect with a riveted 3x crankset, but unexpectedly it has a Shimano Tourney TZ derailleur. And while there is a Tourney up front, the back reverts to what I often see on bikes in this price range, and that's the narrow gear range 7-speed and what I call a Shimano flat-face derailleur. The saddle looks and feels like every other low-price saddle, but it's printed with BCA branding. And we can't forget the Walmart bike kickstand. So the parts are a mix of the usual big box bike fare with a couple of small surprises. But we can't overlook the biggest factor this bike has going for it, and that's the US-based assembly. And in honor of that, I dug out some American flag-inspired gloves that I purchased from China. I spoke earlier of the proper domain for this bike. It's for casual rides, running around the neighborhood, making quick errand runs. For things like that, it does a great job. The front suspension on this bike easily handles sidewalk bumps and makes the ride mostly pleasant for around town. And the 21 speeds work well for this type riding, provided you don't have really steep hills in your area. So as expected, around town the SC29 is quite usable. But what about that mountain bike look? Because this is where you can get into trouble or at least have your experience ruined. Because of course I took it to a mountain bike trail. Now I'm not saying you can't ride one of these on a mountain bike trail, but if you do, just know that the ride will quickly become wearing on both you and the bike. And also know that the ride is not what you may be expecting. And if on the trail, you'll quickly notice that the components become limiting, like that 3x7 drivetrain and climbing. You have to go up on a trail to be able to have fun going down. So that 3x7 will limit you there. On top of that, trying to shift a twist shifter while you're climbing is not fun. Plus, the generic 29-inch knobbies, they're not the most inspiring grippers. And even on climbs, you'll push that front suspension well outside its designed operating parameters. There's also the geometry, and because this looks like a mountain bike, it's so easy to forget that this really has a comfort bike geometry. So getting in the right position to attack a trail, that's just not going to happen. And for me, this makes riding, or climbing in particular, a relentless task that ends up draining me quickly and adds to a lot of pushing. I already mentioned the front fork showing some issues even going over roots while climbing. Going downhill or going fast on flat ground gets even worse. It definitely reminds you that it's a street fork that you're trying to ride on a mountain bike trail. And what you don't hear from the front fork, you're going to hear from that rear derailleur, that Shimano flat face. Both of them are going to be in a shouting match trying to remind you that a mountain bike trail is not where you should be with this bike. So it's best to stick with what this bike can do and what it was designed for. And fortunately, right across the street is a trail that will meet this need perfectly. This is a light trail, exactly what was listed on the SC29's info card. And on light trails, there's not an issue with the suspension nor the bike geometry. And the 3x7 drivetrain and the twist shifters are going to work perfectly in this environment, provided it's not hot and humid, in which case you may need gloves to shift. And if you're wondering how you'll know a light trail from a mountain bike trail, a good rule of thumb that I've found is if you find people walking by with butterfly nets, you're in the right place, a light trail. So let's run through a few checks. Running errands, check. Casual trail rides, check. Rides around the neighborhood with friends, check. So far, this bike makes all the checks for a mass market rider, provided that rider doesn't get lulled into false expectations from those mountain bike looks. The SC29 is for people that want those looks, but also only really want to ride around town or around the block or on light bike paths. And for that, this bike makes perfect sense, arguably more sense than buying more than is needed. And as far as my question that I had earlier about how the experience would be if shipping and poor assembly were taken out of the equation, that's easy to answer. Now remember, this bike came straight off the assembly line, an assembly line where I saw wheels being trued before they went on bikes. This straight off the assembly line bike not only has perfectly true wheels, but the brakes work and don't make noise, and the shifting is well dialed in. So there is a difference in what comes off the assembly line and what you may get through either shipping damage or poor assembly. I've had a pleasant experience with this SC29, but I'm only evaluating it versus other affordable bikes in its class. And speaking of affordable, this bike is $149 at Walmart, but I also found an identical bike, the Genesis GS29, for $122.55 at Walmart. Both these bikes come from Kent International, though the Genesis, as far as I know, is assembled in China. I'd like to compare the two, but I suspect the BCA's US assembly is going to be worth the extra few dollars. At $149, there are going to be a few sacrifices, and in the case of the SC29, it's going to be the front disc brake paired with a rear linear pull brake. I'm not a fan of that, and also it uses the Shimano flat face rear derailleur. We're starting to see Tourney trickle down even into some cheaper bikes, and they used one on the front, so there's no reason there shouldn't be one on the rear. For what it is, the BCA SC29 isn't a bad bike for the casual rider, especially if you want that casual ride to have some mountain bike style. And the assembled in the US printed on the head tube badge will most certainly make for a conversation piece, even when you meet other riders that might not like big box bikes. I have two questions for you. The first is, would you consider a bike like the SC29 if you only had $149 to spend? And the second, and I know for my international viewers this will have less impact, but what do you think about the assembled in the USA aspect? Comment below. Also, be sure you're subscribed and that you're visiting KevCentral.com regularly, because there's lots to come and I'd like to have you ride along with me. Thanks for watching and have a great day.